So today I'm going to do a top 10 Star Trek characters from Next Generation, DS9 and Voyager who we might most like to see pop up in future installments of Star Trek Picard. So, for the purposes of this video, since we know that Riker, Data, Troy and Seven of Nine all make an appearance in the first season of Picard, I'm just going to include other characters apart from these ones from Next Gen, DS9 and Voyager. So there's a number of factors I thought probably needs to be considered when thinking about what characters would be best to return in the Star Trek Picard series. Past history with Picard, how their presence might enrich the story of the series as we know it, are they fan favourites, and how well are these characters ranking at the moment in terms of their popularity in YouTube searches. So here we go, here's the top 10. So coming in at number 10 was Tuvok from Voyager. Obviously Romulans have got a pretty big part to do with the story in Star Trek Picard, and as we don't have any former Romulan crew members in any of the series, the next best thing is a Vulcan. Tuvok would have, I imagine, quite an extensive knowledge of the Romulans and their history. Coming in at number 9, Chief O'Brien would be an interesting choice to see. He's had quite a bit of involvement with Next Generation when he was the transporter chief on the Enterprise D. He's obviously had a big history on DS9 as the chief engineer on there. Some things going on in this show that are very technological in nature. We see Borg and Romulan technology. A person with extensive engineering knowledge is probably going to be a handy one to have. There's a history and background there with Picard, so I thought Chief O'Brien might be an interesting person to see come back. Coming in at number 8, I've split this one down the middle between Kira Nerys and Chakotay. Both first officers. Kira was the first officer on DS9, Chakotay was the first officer on the Voyager, and it's obvious from what we see in the trailers from Star Trek Picard is he's doing these missions off the books, not part of Starfleet. It's a bit on the side. He's probably doing some things that are a little bit outside normal Starfleet rules and regulations. We know from Kira's background in the Bajoran militia that she doesn't have any problems whatsoever getting her hands dirty with things that are perhaps not quite completely legitimate, so to speak. And by the same criteria, Chakotay as well, because he's a former member of the Maquis. We know there's been that shunning of Starfleet before. What better to have somebody else in the series that has shown disillusionment with Starfleet on a past occasion in the form of Kira Nerys and Chakotay. Coming in at number 7, I've got Guinan. Guinan was somebody that Picard would always go to when he was struggling with something. She's very old and wise, almost like the Star Trek equivalent of a Yoda type character, and Picard would go to her on the odd occasion on the Enterprise D for guidance. Picard is obviously struggling with something that's going on in his past, with whatever has gone down with the Romulans that's caused him to leave Starfleet. He's really struggling with something that's happened in the past, and we know that Guinan is somebody that Picard goes to when he needs support. So I think it would be great to see Guinan pop up to give Picard a few pearls of wisdom. Coming in at number 6, I've got Q. Q has been a big part of the Star Trek franchise. He's been in all of the Star Trek series, and he's such a great character. There was always such great repartee between Picard and Q, and I think that would be awesome to see again. Coming in at number 5, I've got the EMH from Voyager. Such a great character, and it would be very interesting to see where he's got to at this particular point in time with his program. It's obviously evolved quite a bit throughout the course of Voyager, and he's certainly a fan favourite. Coming in at number 4, Geordi La Forge. First and foremost, the Next Generation crew have to take precedence in terms of guest appearances in future episodes. I think if in fact Geordi is still around at this particular time and nothing's happened to him, God forbid, fingers crossed he is, I think Geordi La Forge would be a great one to see in this series. By the same criteria as I mentioned earlier with Miles O'Brien, obviously the stuff going on that requires the experience of an experienced Starfleet engineer. He's got a history with Picard, and we know from the Picard Countdown comics that Geordi had a pretty big hand in constructing this evacuation fleet for the Romulans when their star was going supernova. So, assuming that Geordi came through all that intact, I think it would be great to see Geordi pop up again in Star Trek Picard. Coming in at number 3, I've got Dr. Crusher. There was always that hint at a romantic relationship between Picard and Dr. Crusher, but there was always that history that got in the way. But there was Picard when he was captain on the Stargazer, and then Beverly was there with Jack Crusher, and there was a bit of a love triangle thing going on. And obviously throughout their whole journey together on the Enterprise D and E, there was always a very familiar and very tender relationship between Picard and Dr. Crusher. With Picard going through, some tough times, it would seem, in the context of this series, what better to bring Beverly back and to help him through some of these tough moments that he's going through. I think it'd be great to see Beverly come back. Coming in at number 2, we've got Worf. Worf's such a great character. I think being on DS9 and on Next Generation, he endured through 2 series. We need a character that's got a bit of muscle in there, and Worf's definitely got that. Worf was always there for Picard, even during moments where they didn't always see eye to eye. You knew Worf would lay his life down for Picard, and there was a really strong bond there between those two. So yeah, I think seeing Worf pop up in Picard to help him out, add a bit of muscle to the fight, I think would be a nice little touch. Providing, of course, they don't mess with his makeup and give him the Discovery version of the Klingon makeup. I think a lot of fans would be outraged if that happened. So if he is to show up again, let's not muck around with the makeup too much and keep that consistent, I think would be the best course of action there. And now to the number 1 choice. The number 1 choice seems to be, from the posts and so forth, what I've heard in the comment section and so forth, is Captain Janeway. Captain Janeway, or Admiral Janeway would be by now. Admiral Janeway was such a strong leader, but also being in the Delta Quadrant for the whole of Voyager and having so many rendezvous with the Borg during the course of that series, she's going to have a pretty extensive knowledge of the Borg, and the Borg are obviously involved in the Star Trek Picard series. We've seen her being quite willing to bend the rules when she needs to achieve her mission. She's a fan favourite, great actress. Kate Mulgrew would be, awesome to see back as Janeway. And despite not being a member of the Next Generation crew, she's such a strong character, has such a big history and knowledge of the Borg, would put her in a very, very good place to be an ally of Picard with whatever he's going through in the course of this series and chain of events that he finds himself in. So what do you think? Did I get it right? Was my top 10 kind of on the money, or do you think there's some obvious characters I missed out on? What would you have done differently? Leave some comments in the comments section and let me know what you guys think in terms of which characters you would have liked to see. So as always, guys, please click like, please subscribe, ring the notification bell. You know how to do it. And until then, I'll see you next time.